There are reasons why a belt will mistrack. It doesn't just mistrack naturally. Typically, there are two categories of root causes that a belt could mistrack, and those would be either operating conditions or equipment conditions. So, operating conditions would be things you're doing that are causing the belt to mistrack. Altogether, there's a whole bunch of reasons why the belt can mistrack. Most of you probably have multiple reasons why that belt might be mistracking. It could be a combination of operating conditions, and it could be a condition, a bit of equipment conditions. When you throw two or three things into why the belt's mistracking, it can be quite frustrating. One of the most typical reasons why a belt mistrack is because of the operating conditions of carryback. So carryback basically sticks to the return path of the belt after the belt discharges the cargoes. And then that carryback eventually can build up on return rolls. All rolling components steer the belt. All rolling components have influence on the belt. In order for a rolling component to steer the belt correctly, it must be clean. So when we allow carryback to build up on return rolls, that will cause the belt to start to wander. All rolling components have influence on the belt. In order for those rolling components to actually guide the belt and steer the belt correctly, those rolling components must be clean. So you want to make sure you have belt scrapers installed. You want to make sure that those belt scrapers are maintained. You want to make sure that they're tensioned properly. And we're always going to recommend a multiple belt cleaning system, which would consist of a primary cleaner with typically a urethane blade, and then a secondary cleaner, which definitely should be made of tungsten carbide. So bend pulleys, take up pulleys, carrying idlers, return rollers, they all must be clean. They can't be built up with material. Another operating condition, and this adds to this wildly important statement, is seized rollers. So all rolling components steer the belt. In order for a rolling component to steer the belt correctly, that rolling component must be clean, and it also must be rolling. If you've got seized rollers, and this is a clear indication that that roller was seized, this is a clear indication that that roller is seized. If those rolling components are not rolling, that belt will not operate properly. So we got to make sure that those rolling components are clean and rolling. So a couple of other operating conditions, and these are quite common. There's two types of loading conditions that can cause the belt to mistrack. One would be what we call off-center loading, like you see in picture 1. And a little less understandable is what we call segregated loading, which would be in picture 2. Now, off-center loading is pretty self-explanatory. It's basically you're loading material onto one side of the belt, and that load will push that belt up into the carrying idlers, eventually, if it's severe enough, causing spillage. Segregated load is a little bit different. Now, segregated loaded isn't going to be in every industry, but it's the most common in mining industry. Anytime you're dealing with material that you're taking out of the ground, that material isn't going to be consistent in size until after that equipment's ran through a couple of different crushers. So that run of mine material can have some big chunks in it. It'll also have very fine material in it. What happens with conveyors is, as that material that has big chunks in it and small fines in it, as that material is being conveyed, it's being vibrated. And that vibration that's put into the cargo will cause the fines to sift to the bottom, and then it'll cause the big chunks to migrate to the top. So then when you've got a conveyor belt that is has the big chunks on one side or on the top and small fines on the bottom. And that conveyor dumps onto another conveyor that runs at a 90-degree angle. So let's say we're dealing like this, and then I've got another belt running at a 90. What happens is those big chunks that are on the top of the pile will fly out to this outer edge of the belt, and the small fines will drop to this side of the belt, just like we see in that photo. That that improper distribution of weight can cause the belt to mistrack at all. Cause the belt to mistrack as well. Another kind of really underappreciated reason why a belt mistracks is because maintenance staffs will often improperly adjust any dust skirting. So what happens is maintenance staff will see dust or spillage coming out from underneath the skirt board, and then they make adjustments down on that skirt board to help with that spillage. When that skirting becomes unevenly adjusted, in that one side of the belt has more drag than the other side of the belt, then the side of the belt that has more drag will tend to move a little bit slower. That can cause a little bit of belt mistracking as well. So a real good practice to avoid that problem is to make sure that you're supporting the belt with very closely stacked idlers like you see in picture B. So in picture B, because those idlers are so stacked together, they can't create this excess wear on the skirting and cause that excess drag and then belt mistracking.